Well, I would love to hear any stories of like magic or miracles you've experienced in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be on your bike trips, just anything you'd like to share. It can be something you've witnessed. Um, just
Sure.
anything that feels good to you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's been a few instances. I mean, I think first off, uh, since I began traveling, instances of finding magic in my life have exponentially increased. I realized I kind of thinking about this, and I just realized it's like, oh, when I started to get out there, that's when all of this started to really pick up. When you're kind of getting out of your normal routine and having to, just have a certain amount of faith every day that you're going to figure out where to stay, where to find food, where to find water, good people, support, any of that. And I think the most dramatic example of it that came up was so as I say, right. So I went on one trip in the United States, and then I was riding my bike from Kansas to the North Shore of Oregon. And when I was in Boulder, Colorado, I met a woman, and we were kind of sweet on each other, and we were palling around for a few days while I was in town. And when I got to Montana, we got back in touch. And I'm like, hey, let's meet up. She had some vacation time, and let's meet up in Eastern Colorado. So she's going to come out to Eastern Colorado. I'm riding my bicycle with a fella I'd met on the road, very cool guy named Ajamal. And normally, I do not ride my bicycle at night. Traffic, they can't see you. You know, Accidents happen at night, right? So normally I would not do that, but because we had a fixed deadline to reach this town to meet her by that time, I had to ride at night one night. And so I'm just riding out on this, empty highway approaching Eastern Oregon. So I suppose I was in, I forget, Idaho or Montana or one of those. And I, so okay, some backstory. Ever since I was 11 years old, I had the idea that I wanted to learn Spanish, ride my bicycle, travel on my bicycle through Latin America. I just wanted to do that. Somehow I identified that dream, and I'd put it off for a long time. And then I'd started to ride my bicycle and through the United States, but Latin America would be too much, it'd be dangerous. But that night, people talk about hearing a message. That doesn't really happen to me, but it happened that night. I was out riding at night, and I'm pedaling as fast as I can down this highway, trying to reach the next town so we can find a place to camp. And it just came through just as clear as day. Like, no, you got to do this. You have to. Like, if you don't take a crack at this, at this dream of riding your bike across Latin America, you're really giving up something, in your life. Here you are, you're pretty young, you don't have major, responsibility, you don't have a family, you speak Spanish, you can give this a shot, and you need to do that. And it just came together. And that was in 2018. And, we're in year 6 of working on that project. And it's kind of become the axis around which everything else revolves. And it's not been without frustrations and setbacks and difficulty, obviously. I mean, it's not any different than normal life, but I've been really glad to have that kind of guiding light of like, this is your project, and it's important that you prioritize this, and it's important that you do the things you need to do to keep your body and your mind uh, prepared to make that happen. And I've never before or since I've never had a message just come through so clearly. And yeah, so I would consider that a moment of magic that inspired me and continues to. Um, you know, but magic comes in many shapes and sizes. I mean, I'd say I first traveled to Latin America when I was 19. I lived in Costa Rica for about a year and a half, and that's where my Spanish first started to deepen. And in that time, I met a Mexican fella who invited me to spend some time in Mexico City with him. So I went and spent time in Mexico City. We got to be friends. I came back to Mexico City later after he was dating a woman who he would eventually marry. And as is the case for many residents of Mexico City, her family was from the countryside, and they had migrated to the city in the late 60s, early 70s. And for New Year's, we went out to the family of her relatives that still lived in that countryside area. And that changed everything, because that was the first time when I really saw non-urban, non-tourist Latin America. This is still a small farming town where everything kind of works. I mean, the people are trading dollars and cents, but things a lot more function on an exchange economy. And this baptism was a big event because you use the baptism of a baby in your family as a pretext to throw a 3 day feast party. I mean, bandstand and music and serving. I mean, hundreds of meals, and the whole town comes through, and people are bringing, giving you turkeys to slaughter and prepare, and rabbits, and all the ladies in the community come around, and they're cooking these meals. And I had just never seen food like this. You grow up in the United States and you eat your Tex-Mex, but here we are on the countryside, and they're brewing up black mole, in these clay pots, I mean, as people have been doing for a long time out there. And, mole is something that I think, usually has about 33, 34 ingredients that require very specific preparation and a lot of work. And it only makes sense if you're making food for 200 people because, you're not going to go through all that trouble to serve a family of three. Um, and so seeing that food in its context within an older style of an economy and just the kind of, I mean, like I say, just the magic of how they've passed that tradition. It is women that are doing the cooking out there. That's still the case. From mother to daughter and onward, and maintaining that tradition. And you eat that food, and it just, I mean, there's a reason that Mexican cuisine is like UNESCO World Heritage Site. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, it just lights you up. It does backflips across your tongue. It's just, and to know that that came from just this little, adobe house in the middle of the countryside with ingredients from right around there, and that people have just been enjoying and savoring that magic for generations. That's a very special thing. So I would say that as well, and then going on to see that food tradition all throughout Latin America, and seeing that this is not something that you can go to a restaurant and order. Like, it has to come from the context of the family and the religion and the time of year, and you know it's completely contingent on that place and that family. That's so cool. That's so cool. You can't Google review that. It's something older, and when you grow up in the Midwest or surrounded by strip malls and Chili's and Denny's, you don't see that. You don't see what that was, and that's how we used to eat. And it's amazing.